Are you ready?
Hi, it's Patrick and Cody. As promised, we're bringing shows to do with investigative journalism. Today, we're joined by Joan Shenton. Joan, it's a pleasure for both of us.
Thank you. Is it Coley or Holly?
Holly,
Holly,
Holly, yes,
Patrick.
Holly.
It's wonderful to see you there. Here I am in London. It's a beautiful evening here. The sun has been out today, which has been a joy. Um, and
Yeah, I
really,
hear they're getting ready to dim the sun over in England.
yeah, yeah, they are. It's quite unusual, but it's nice. And so, yeah, so where are you exactly?
We're in Ecuador, in Machala, on along the coast. It's
On
a
the
small
coast.
town next to Guayaquil.
Ah, and
Yeah,
did you say Machala?
exactly, Machala.
Machala.
Patrick's interviewed you before, but this is my first time, so welcome.
Thank you.
So has AIDS research gotten better or worse over the years? Well, since the 80s and 90s.
Well, the thing is that, when we were a band, and we were really going for it, and we thought we were going to change the world. And that was when we started our first film in 87, and then we did another in 89, and another in 90, and another in 92. And these were on prime time current affairs TV in Britain, and they were sold abroad. We thought we were going to change the world. We really did. And our very first film, called AIDS the Unheard Voices, actually won, amazingly, the Royal Television Society Award for Journalism. And so we really were on a high. But little by little, our position was eroded by, of course, the power of the pharmaceutical industry. And even though we made four dispatches, it's called, they were very high profile current affairs programs. Um, we didn't change the world. In fact, we were sat upon and we were deeply, deeply attacked by the establishment. And in the end, Channel 4 um, could no longer, they didn't want to commission us. And we had a whole program ready to go about how HIV didn't exist at all, the work of the Perth group. And we'd done a whole lot of tests with young people who had tested positive in one hospital in London and negative in another. And it was all very serious stuff. And we tried to get it onto Channel 4 News, and we were commissioned, and we made a film um, called Channel 4 News Report. And would you believe it? They cancelled it the day before transmission because the guy who was then the medical correspondent would not tolerate having our film go out, since he had committed himself to the dogma, to the AIDS orthodox point.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
mhm.
Oh, sorry, keep going.
No, carry on.
Well, I was going to say just last week, HIV was on the front pages of Ecuador, and it's interesting how you see the evolution of the myth. They didn't even mention AIDS; they just talked about HIV and HIV related illnesses. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that the young people today don't even know what the difference between HIV and AIDS is, and that's
Exactly.
so
You're right.
crucial. And you've been there for the most important events in AIDS history as a documentary filmmaker, as a journalist. You went to South Africa, you talked to the presidents.
I
So you
did.
knew,
That
yeah.
was
So
such an honor. Mhm.
exactly, your reports went all over Africa, didn't they?
They did, the whole continent, on a series called Mnet, a program called Carte Blanche. I couldn't believe it. And Mbeki didn't give an interview of this nature to anyone else. And it was really an amazing coup that I got it with the help of a South African woman journalist. Anita Allen. And Hugh Christie and he was the editor of Continuum magazine. We went there together, and it was amazing to get Mbeki onto the program. I don't know whether you've seen it, his interview, but he was so wise and so knowledgeable, and yet his whole presidency collapsed because of his views on AIDS. They destroyed his presidency.
Yeah, part of your interview is in the film Positively False, correct?
Yes, part
Yeah.
of it.
And he put on a conference in Africa with AIDS dissidents.
He did.
You
And
covered
Peter,
that also.
yeah, yeah. Peter Duesberg came, and Harvey Bialy, and
Cross cone
you
line,
know, hmm? Klaus
cross cone.
Kohnlein. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it was an amazing event. But you could see the sharks swimming round, and the man who became president after Mbeki, he he actually tried to demolish Mbeki at the farewell conference evening. I can't remember his name either. He's gone as well.
Mhm.
But it
There's
was
been a
such.
Mhm.
Mm, mm,
there's been a lot of outrage recently that Trump, part of the cutting of U.S. aid, AIDS medication in South Africa got cut, and I'm like, oh, is that really such a bad thing?
well, quite. I mean, I have some news for you too. Um, I mean, of course, we fought USAID quite strongly because we felt they were using AIDS to cover their policy of population control.
Interesting.
And
Population reduction,
yeah,
eugenics
yeah.
under the
And
guise of medical science. Interesting.
so also, I've spent most of my life criticizing the FDA for allowing AZT to go through, and which was a corrupt series of experiments with it, safety trials. And also, so USAID, FDA, and the WHO. So I spent most of my life criticizing these organizations. And finally now, Trump has decided to go for it. But I mean, the main thing is, it's so weird. Peter Duesberg used to say, "Strange bedfellows." You know
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's
Strange bedfellows. I was actually thinking of that phrase before you said it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, because
my bit of news is that shall I tell you now?
please,
Well,
please go
it
ahead.
hasn't actually happened, but it's going to happen. I I've collected an archive for 35 years of the AIDS debate to do with all our films. And it's called the Meditel AIDS Archive. And it was 42 boxes. And those 42 boxes were paid for by a benefactor in Vienna who, for all these years, has faithfully paid the storage costs. And then I decided to try and place this because I'm not a spring chicken anymore. And I don't know what would happen to all these boxes when I die. So I tried to place it in different places. And the Wellcome Foundation, funnily enough, was interested. But then I was advised not to give it to them because they didn't fully understand just how critical our work was of AZT. And
Is
they
this the Welcome is the company that manufactured ACT, correct?
Exactly. I mean,
Okay,
the Wellcome Trust and the Wellcome Foundation are two different organizations, but they're linked. The
okay.
Wellcome Foundation is the company, and the Wellcome Trust is the charity.
So where are these files going? Do you find a
My
place for them? The
well,
archives.
I then tried. I had some interest from Brown University in America, and they said, uh, eventually they said no, and so I was talking to a benefactor who's helped fund some of our films in California, and I said, "What do you suggest I do?" And he said, "Well, why don't you take it to Mary Holland, who is the CEO of Children's Health Defense, run by RFK Jr., Bobby Kennedy Jr. So
Interesting.
I took it to her. She's a wonderful person. She's a lawyer, and she's written a book called HPV on Trial, Human Papillomavirus on Trial. And I had made my film called Sacrificial Virgins about HPV at the same time. So we were on the same page. And she said she would be really thrilled to have the archive, but it needed scanning.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I mean, 42 boxes is one thing. I honed the 42 down to 25. And then I thought, why can't I raise the money to scan it here in England so that the boxes don't have to be shifted? So I did raise the money for scanning it. Long story there, because some people let me down, but I did. I've scanned the whole of the archive. Tell me if I've told you this before. It's
Wow.
270,000 pages, and it's
Amazing.
all on one memory stick. I
Amazing.
mean, I've also got it on in file in a hard disk, but one memory stick. I couldn't believe it. We shipped the boxes off to Hull, and it came back, and they've done a fantastic job. But halfway through, they rang me and they said, our quote is no good. It's going to come to double. I said, why? And he said, well, we didn't realize you had so many paper clips, so many staples, so many photographs, and so many newspaper cuttings that had to be hand fed.
Hmm.
So I
Mhm.
thought,
You're old
yeah,
school.
You should have also backup too as well for
yes,
this pen drive. Yeah, exactly. Is
I
AIDS in Africa different from AIDS in the rest of the world?
no, AIDS in Africa is simply disease from malnutrition and from multiple attacks of pathogens through dirty water, you know, and through, unfortunately, a lot of disease like malaria, TB, syphilis, and those conditions make you test positive
But
because,
also in South Africa, more women test positive than men. So it's a completely different epidemic.
yes, I'm not sure how to answer why more women than men
Yeah.
test positive. I think it's
Hmm.
pregnancy. Pregnancies can make you test positive. There are
Sure.
65 conditions that
Mhm.
can make you test HIV positive. I
Mhm.
mean, young people don't know this.
Hmm.
65.
Yeah, yeah, but also like in Ecuador, the testing for HIV mostly is confined to risk groups, those people who have risk behavior, plus pregnant women. They test pregnant women.
Oh,
Um,
right.
yeah, and also, yeah, people don't realize it. And also young people today, so we've seen the evolution of the myth. And in the 80s and 90s, HIV and AIDS, it was a much more open question because people were trying to figure it out. But now
Yeah.
it's like people, it's in a lot of ways, it's even become exaggerated in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
Well, I originally come from Egypt, so what's there about AIDS in Egypt? Anything?
I haven't studied AIDS in Egypt, but they don't talk about it very much. In fact,
Oh,
nobody talks about HIV and AIDS very much. It's only once a year when the drug companies decide they need to, drum up more people to take the antivirals.
or
That
World AIDS Day, or last week
yeah.
on the front page of Ecuador's principal newspaper.
Why was that? Why do you think they did it?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
So why is the medicine they give even to babies in Africa so deadly?
Well, um, the medicine these days, I'm not entirely in touch, but they do still try and give newborns whose mothers are HIV positive these antivirals. And
Of which ACT was the original, and maybe the non
ACT is
is
the original.
super toxic. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. ACT killed a whole generation of young gay men. It absolutely did. I mean, 3,000 milligrams a day. And I went to New York and I filmed a group called Heal New York. I don't know if you've had a chance, but we made a film called AZT Cause for Concern.
No, I haven't seen that film.
I
Uh,
would love you to see it because
I
that's,
would
I
love
think
to as well.
it's
Huh.
on our website, on the Immunity Resource Foundation.
Okay,
Um,
I'll check it
it,
out.
there's a page called Videos, and you go to that, and then you can download, well, you can view any of our films free.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so AIDS in Africa is not a new disease, is it?
No, it's a whole lot of old diseases which are relabeled as AIDS. I mean, AIDS is 27 different conditions, which when you have the condition, e.g., malaria, TB, syphilis, um, any of those, you have the disease. But if you have that plus HIV, it's called AIDS. And in AZT Cause for Concern, oh no, in AIDS and Africa, actually, we went to Uganda and we interviewed a TB specialist, and he was unbelievably brave to be interviewed. Um, he was called Dr. Okot Nwang, and he was livid because he had a famous TB unit in Makerere Hospital. But when everything happened to do with AIDS, American companies came roaring in and universities and stuff and were taking everybody's blood. And so they took everybody's blood and shipped it off to America, and it came back positive. And they took the blood of all his patients in the AIDS ward. And then they came back and they said, right, these patients have to leave. Sorry, in the TB ward, in the TB ward. These patients have to leave the TB ward. They have to go to the AIDS ward. And they stopped giving them their TB treatment. So Dr. Wang lost all his patients because they were considered
Huh.
to have
Sure.
AIDS and needed antivirals.
That's interesting because if you're labeled as HIV positive, that can have dramatic implications for the medicine you get for things like
Yeah.
tuberculosis or pneumonia. I wanted to ask you, because I know you're knowledgeable about this thing, who is Dr. Peter Duesberg? Can you explain for our listeners who is Dr. Peter Duesberg?
Oh, Dr. Peter Duesberg is a genius. He was one of the most clever scientists. He was a chemist by training, and then he became a molecular biologist, and he was professor of molecular biology at
California, Berkeley.
in California, Berkeley, California, and he decided that he would look into the AIDS thing. He was Young Scientist of the Year. He was a member of every single
Yeah,
organization
I
for
have a photo of him shaking hands with the Pope. He was that well
Yes, I
known.
saw that today.
Yeah.
He he was brought up a Catholic in Germany.
Mhm.
Um,
But he had been flown to the Vatican to meet the Pope because he was considered in the 70s one of the bright voices in cancer research.
Thank you. Absolutely right, Patrick. He was. But then he realized that oncogenes didn't really exist. So he pointed that out to people and they didn't like it, his
Yeah,
peers.
big research bonanza.
Yeah.
And he's been ridiculed. They can't fire him at the university because he has tenure, but he can't teach master's degree courses. He got his lab taken away. He's actually offered to inject himself with HIV to see if anything happens. He can't even get funding to do that because in order to work with the virus, so-called virus, you have to get grants. But yeah, he's
Well,
big name in this.
he was
A lot of people don't
terribly
even know
bad.
that he exists.
He was so badly treated. He They defrocked him and defunded him, and they said he could no longer teach postgraduate students. Can you imagine a man of that brilliance?
Yeah.
And the sad news I have for you is that he has had quite a serious stroke. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that,
So
but it
we
doesn't surprise me.
occasionally,
He's pretty old.
yeah, we occasionally have a Zoom call. He was the inspiration for all of our work that we did at Meditel. He was constantly answering our questions. He in the AIDS catch, he had a fantastic role in that. I want you to see the AIDS catch as well. But yes, Peter Duesberg, brilliant. Sadly, at the moment, not able to work any
Yeah.
longer because of his stroke.
Tell us about your film, Positively False.
And you have a book by that name as well, don't you?
I do actually. I do a little bit of advertising here. Holly, this is
Yes.
Positively False book, and this is the Spanish edition. Did you
Oh,
know there
wow.
was?
Positivamente falso.
Qué bien.
Yeah. And so you can get these. And do you know, a very dedicated friend and colleague translated the whole book, um, you know, out of the
Into
kindness of
Spanish.
his heart. So
That's
it,
nice.
it's very well translated. And I I just got to find his name because my memory for names is going.
Yeah.
Um,
That movie, for me, along with the documentary House of Numbers, are the
yeah,
two classics. If I had to recommend any two documentaries about AIDS to somebody who wasn't familiar with this issue, I'd recommend your
yeah.
movie, Positively False, and House of Numbers. Uh-huh.
Well, I'm glad. Positively False is it's a bit long and detailed, but it does give the history. I tell you a film I really loved, which was selected for two film festivals in London and then banned, and it's called Positive Hell.
Yeah,
It
that's your film too, isn't it?
Yes, and it was filmed in
Yeah,
Spain. Have you seen
yeah.
that one?
Yeah, and I'm friends with Manuel Garrido. In a moment, we want to
Yeah.
ask you about that film, but first let's ask you about Sacrificial Virgins.
Exactly. Sacrificial Virgins. That's an interesting title for a documentary film.
Well, I'll tell you how the title came. Let me just tell you that the translator of this book, I found it, was Leo Varela, who has sadly died since, but he was absolutely brilliant. Um, Wait a minute, where was I going?
Sacrificial Virgins,
Sacrificial Virgin. Yes, well,
Papilloma.
Peter Duesberg had often said while we were researching the AIDS films that he thought the whole papilloma virus vaccine was a complete disaster.
And that means so much coming from Dr. Peter Duesberg, because he's so pro-vaccine. It's only in this one area that he differs from the orthodoxy. So that's also
Yeah,
coming from Peter Duesberg, criticizing papilloma, cervical cancer. That means a
yeah.
lot. Can you tell us what is the papilloma virus, so-called, and cervical cancer? Can you just give us some background about this?
Well, the thing is that Peter decided that to tell us that he thought this was unnecessary. He says there is no proof that HPV, the human papillomavirus, causes cancer. There's only association, and as you know, association does not prove causation.
This is for women, correct? It's
And
supposedly
I know they give it to
sexually
boys
transmitted.
now. They say
The
boys can have
vaccine,
it.
but they give
Yeah,
the boys the vaccine.
they do. They do because they say they can get it somewhere cranially or
Okay.
nasally.
It's probably
And
similar how they test boys for breast cancer genes, but the
yeah,
papilloma virus is big business in Ecuador, where
oh,
there's a lot of scare, and they have clinics, and we might not even be talking about a real disease here. But let's back up, because your film Sacrificial Virgins was really is about the papilloma virus vaccine, is it not?
it is. But the point about that Duisberg was making is there's no need for a vaccine because what you have in older age, if you have cervical cancer as a woman, you have fossils. If you've had HPV before, you get fossils. It's not an active virus that can cause damage. You just
Okay.
have And of course, many women, and I think it's about 30% who die of cervical cancer, have never had any HPV traces.
Okay,
So
so there are people that
yeah.
actually do die from cervical cancer, but where did you get the title sacrificial virgins? Interesting. Sounds like something out of anthropology or
Well, my father was a geographer, and he used to work. He was sent by Shell to Latin America, and he loved Latin America. And he married a Chilean, my mother, and then he got a job in Guatemala, and he decided he would lecture on the Guatemalan Indians. And he was always, as a child, he was always telling me about the fact that they sacrificed Vestal virgins and threw them over rocks. Um, since then, I've heard that that theory has not been supported. But anyway, as a child, I grew up hearing about the sacrificial virgins from my dad. And when I started researching this and I met these young girls who were dying, who had the parents of girls who had died, many in Latin America, you can see at the end of my film, there's a lawyer in Colombia with a church, and there's Ecuador has had cases of death and injury, but nobody lets the
well,
news.
you know what I always think of when I taught school in Ecuador, they always pull the girls out of class on their 15th birthday to get them vaccinated for tetanus. And we know this happens around the world. My brother's a journalist. He actually has done reports about this. And there's actually a court case that found in some parts of the world vaccines for the tetanus were sterilizing the women, but it's almost like
Yeah,
a rite of passage, a noblesse
that's
oblige.
terrible.
Uh, uh, and
I
they
hadn't heard
they
that.
look for girls before they're sexually mature, like in the case of the papilloma vaccine, and so that's why
Yeah,
you're saying that the girls are sacrificed, uh,
yes.
but now it's not the Aztec gods or whatever, but the gods of our culture is the medical
So,
science. Is
Polly,
and
I hope that answers your question. But of course, I have been criticized for making it a sensational headline. But I just, as a child, I was always so aware of these young girls being thrown off cliffs. And when I met some of the young girls who'd been damaged by the aluminium in the vaccine, because they have to have a very strong adjuvant of aluminium, because it's got to last. Um, the adjuvant has to make you fight off the so-called virus and until you're 40 or 50, and then you might develop cervical cancer, so they say, but Duisberg says no, and a lot of other people do too. And so that's the the reason why I called it sacrificial virgins.
were the women paralyzed?
Yes, there were some. Listen, many have died. One in Germany, I went to meet her father. She died in her sleep. She got sleep apnea because you get neurological disorders if you react badly to the aluminium. If aluminium gets into the brain, you're in deep trouble. And Professor Chris Exley, who is absolutely incredible, he's a world authority on aluminium toxicity. He says you have free range aluminium in the brain because it can be picked up from the vaccine site and taken through the body and into the brain. Now, it doesn't do this to everybody, but to some women who are susceptible, it can kill them or it can paralyze them. And I met several who had been paralyzed, and I met the parents of several who had died. And it was a terrible experience.
And your team interviewed people who have actually gone to prison for being HIV positive.
For the
I,
film Positively Wrong?
Yes. Oh, David Crow. He became a prison visitor
Yeah,
of
David Crow,
of
one
the,
of the best. I interviewed
what
him a couple of weeks before he died.
you didn't, did you, Patrick?
Yeah.
One of the best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for him, it was really a passion. The people who had been imprisoned in Canada for HIV, and not just in Canada. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you made the film Positively Wrong?
Well, I was making a trilogy and I wanted to highlight the fact that one of our films had been censored. Positive Hell was censored in London. So I made one. This little trilogy had three different topics. It's all on our website, by the way,
Yeah,
Positively Wrong.
Positively False, Positively Wrong, and
Yeah,
Positive Hell.
yeah.
So Positively Wrong was about the people who had been in jail for having
Yeah.
sex while HIV positive, or how does
They
that work legally?
well, they could be found guilty of murder if the person they had sex with died.
Right.
Or goes on to take ACT and dies,
Yeah.
or like having sex and not disclosing.
And not disclosing, not disclosing. And when you say having AZT, the one of the women in this section that David Crow helped me with, she took AZT and got all the side effects of what was AZT. She had tested HIV positive. She was given AZT, and she died. And so he was accused of murder, the man who had sex with her, for not disclosing it.
And who are the people in Spain you told the stories of in Positively Hell?
Who are the people? Who? Oh,
In
positive
Spain,
health.
you told the
Oh, in
stories
Spain, they were a
in
group.
Positively
That was
Hell.
fascinating. They didn't speak, none of them spoke English. They only spoke Spanish. And I came across Dr. Manuel Garrido, whom you know, Patrick, and he had a big group of members of people who had tested HIV positive. And what happened was that when they were kids in Vigo, in this port, there was a huge epidemic of heroin addiction, which was coming in very, very cheap into the
Heroin and
port.
cocaine.
Yeah. And they had become heroin addicts very, very young, 15, 16,
Like
17.
that girl in Spain, and then now a woman, what's her name? Uh,
Raquel,
Raquel Sanz. Yeah, I
what
interviewed
a
with her.
memory you have. She was
Yeah,
one of them. She was
yeah.
one of them.
Uh-huh. And
And
she had been injecting heroin and cocaine and then tested positive and
they
uh,
all
oh,
tested positive because if you're on heroin, you test positive. Okay.
uh,
So
or in
they were looking,
Manuel Garrido's case, he wasn't a drug addict, but
he was an
he lived
alcoholic.
he lived with a woman who used drugs and he tested positive. Uh, but I'm sorry, go
He was
on.
quite a
Yeah,
serious alcoholic, actually.
right. Okay.
Yeah, he tested positive too. He wasn't cocaine. He wasn't a heroin addict. But the thing is, there was a charity in Spain called Proyecto Hombre, and they took these young people in and got them off the heroin. But in the process, they tested them for HIV, and they found they were all HIV positive. So they said, "We don't have enough money to give you we don't have enough money to give you AZT. So just go off, lead your lives as best you can." And they did. And Raquel had two girls, two children. They were born HIV positive because they had their maternal antibodies, which you keep for 18
Yeah,
months.
and if you have antibodies, you're immune. But these people, they're alive now
Yeah,
because they didn't take the drugs, or they only took the drugs for a short time.
yeah,
Drugs meaning the chemotherapy, antiviral
yeah,
drugs.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Which, so when Peter Duesberg says that AIDS is caused by drugs, he's not only talking about recreational drugs like poppers that were used in the homosexual scene, but also talking about the medical drugs that they give.
Oh,
But
he was a huge advocate of the danger of AZT. He was one of the first people to really draw the world attention to it, our attention to it. And yeah, it's AZT was a killer, an absolute killer. It was a DNA chain terminator.
Mhm. Yeah, it was originally developed as a cancer drug in the
Yeah.
70s, but considered even too toxic for that. And now the AIDS medication today isn't that toxic, and it could seem like it's working because somebody's can live for 15, 20 years, but it's because we all have the image cemented in our mind of an entire generation dying
Exactly.
at the end of
Yeah.
the 80s, you know. Would you agree that AIDS is a very emotional issue for most people?
Yes, but funny enough, the younger generation now, they don't really talk about it.
Well, that's
They
true.
don't they do not talk about AIDS anymore. As you
Well,
said.
yeah, but what did we see 5 years ago with the health circus? It's the same pattern,
Yeah.
an epidemic of a new test with a toxic treatment. So if whether you call it HIV or whether you call it COVID, in a sense, we're
Yeah,
talking about the same thing.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
I'm fascinated to know, Holly, why you became interested in this subject.
Well, actually, I've been living with Patrick for like more than 5 years now, and
Ah,
we've
right.
been talking about that a
Yes,
lot, about all his research as well. He reads a lot
yes.
about that, and also he's telling me this, and yeah. So,
Wonderful.
John, I want to thank you for taking the time today. Can you walk us through the testing? Why is the testing for HIV such a thorny subject? And why does it matter if someone has a false positive test? In that case, they just wouldn't go on to develop AIDS, would they?
Oh my goodness. You've put me on the spot now talking about the test. You know that the PCR test, polymerase chain reaction, was invented by Professor Carey Mullis, who was a Nobel laureate, right?
Yeah, he wrote the introduction to Dr. Peter
He did.
Duesberg's
And
book, didn't he? Inventing the AIDS
I
virus.
I prepared a quote from him for you um, for the program today. Um, he wrote this introduction and he actually said, I understand that results of PCR testing for the so-called human immunodeficiency virus are often taken as evidence for the disease state acquired immune deficiency syndrome by the medical profession. This is regrettable, as such an assumption of association is without scientific basis and is often used as a justification for treatment involving admittedly dangerous pharmaceuticals. Carey Mullis wrote it, the man who invented PCR, said we.
That's a test they use for HIV, isn't it? It's called the viral load test.
Viral load.
And there's also a test that became a
And they've been
household.
using it for COVID,
Yeah.
the
So
same
there we
test.
have it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, from the horse's mouth. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. So now we want to go even deeper and ask on a fundamental level how we even know that viruses in general exist. A lot of journalists won't even touch this question, including Dr. Peter Duisberg. But you went into
Yeah.
Germany, you talked with Dr. Stefan Lanka. So what
Yes.
was the name of your film about the measles court case?
I never made a film about it, but I've known Stefan for many, many years.
You went to Germany and
Yes.
you interviewed
Yeah.
Dr. Stefan Lanka, didn't you?
But I interviewed him long before that in London as well, in the 90s, in the early 90s. And we went to the World AIDS conference in Geneva together. I've known Stefan for a long time.
But I
And
did see a presentation that you made during the COVID crisis where you went to Germany, met up with a
I
couple
did.
activists. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
well
But
done.
that's not a movie though.
It's an interview, just an
Okay.
interview that is also available.
Mhm.
Um, and
On the
he came
website.
to meet us it's just an interview,
But
actually.
tell us about the measles trial and what you found out when you
Oh,
interviewed him.
I didn't interview him about the measles trial because
Okay.
Stefan's he's difficult to interview in a way. I don't know if you heard the interview. He's amazingly knowledgeable, but his basic position is that, well, he said he discovered a virus, when he was a student. He discovered a virus in the sea. But listen, I can't get into that. My brain isn't going to be able to deal with that properly. I really interviewed him like 20 years on. How do you feel the situation is to do with AIDS? And of course, he's dismayed, completely dismayed. And he's another one that they've tried to completely discredit him, you know. He makes a living lecturing in Germany now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Going back to AIDS, so you've seen the tactics of the system at work, disrupting conferences where you were scheduled to present. Uh, so
Censoring reports in England.
exactly. So I wonder what role big pharma has had in all this, as well as gay activism groups.
Well, sadly, the gay activist groups have been a real problem because they do something called patient representative um, for, I can't remember the phrase, and the drug company funds their charities. So they're very, very active in anything. And so when they hear that my film, Positive Hell, was going to be shown in London, they immediately threatened to demonstrate at the homes of the people who were funding the film festival. So the head of the film festival told me he had to withdraw the film. So it was banned on two different film festivals. But funnily enough, I bumped into him recently in London and I said, your film festival's coming up again, the Portobello Film Festival. I said, how about, time has passed, how about showing it this year? And he said, well, I'll discuss it with my board. I don't know whether he's going to allow it. Yes.
And
But
who were the perf? Sorry?
the Perth group, amazing. Eleni Eliopoulos and Valenda Turner. Sadly, Eleni has died, but Eleni published some very learned articles saying that HIV had never been isolated. And Hugh Christie, editor of Continuum magazine, picked this up and ran with it with Continuum in a brilliant way. And Eleni and Val, I speak to Val every now and her group of scientists said HIV had never, ever been isolated. So basically,
Wow.
it's a series of what was done is that you find I don't even know how to explain this properly. It's a bit like COVID as well. You find a sequence in a computer and you do and you work out that you have a virus, and then you develop petri dishes with primers, and everybody has the same primer around the world, so everybody will get the same result. They don't find HIV inside you. They never do. It's always just a secondary test, a surrogate marker.
So, finally, in your opinion, does AIDS exist? Does any virus exist?
I can't answer the second question because I'm not sure whether any virus exists. I'm Stefan Lanka, and we'll have to answer those questions for you.
Sure.
AIDS, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't exist at all. AIDS is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. It was given that name, and basically it 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 doesn't have any credence. It's just a whole lot of old diseases given a new label.
Any new news in general?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that is that I'm in the middle of negotiating the donation of my archive to the children, to Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s Children's Health Defense. And I'm very excited about that because, thank you, because they want to do a kind of launch and publicize it. And so, I mean,
That's so
that
exciting.
it is, isn't it? That we could bring this all back into the public eye. But you know, the other thing that's really important that Gary Null in America has been trying to do, and that is he's trying to make Science Magazine retract the 5 articles that Gallo submitted, which led to the announcement of the probable cause of AIDS has been found. You'll know about this, Patrick, that Gary Null is an activist in America, and he sent round to all of us the actual letter signed by 38 scientists. Have you seen this letter?
No, I haven't, although I am familiar with Gary Knoll.
Yeah, saying that the the 5 articles were fraudulent, and of course they
Yeah,
were, because
yeah, of
Gallo had
course.
stolen the fake diamonds, as Peter Duesberg said. He'd stolen the fake diamonds, e.g., Montagnier's LAV.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, speaking of, they're scientific gangsters. Montanay's a little bit more coy in a lot of his responses. But yeah,
So where do you see AIDS in the future? Like we started this interview by comparing how things stand now compared to 45 years ago when you started this journey. So a year's journey. Now I'd like to ask you to reflect on where AIDS is going in the future. Are things changing? If so, how?
well, I hope Bobby Kennedy Jr., who wrote 11 chapters in his book about AIDS, which, uh, saying that it was all fraudulent. I hope that will come to light more. And with my archive and a big push, maybe Science Magazine can be persuaded to retract those articles that led to HIV being called the cause of AIDS. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
uh, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's an interesting guy because he published that book, The Real Anthony Fauci, but I have
Yes.
a hunch that he probably had a ghostwriter write the chapters about AIDS, but at
Oh, he
least
did. He did.
I don't know. Oh, he did, you know
He
that?
got help from David Rasnick. He's a
Okay,
famed, and from
right.
Celia Farber.
Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
we want to thank you for coming on the show today, Joan. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the work you've done. You are a hero
Yeah,
in the world of
exactly.
investigative journalism.
Oh. Hey, listen, I've loved talking to you. Thank you so, so much. One quick question. Do you want me to send you that letter that Gary Null circulated?
Yeah, please do.
I'm gonna, and can you tell people that www.immunity.org.uk,
We'll
all the
link to
films
that
are
in the
available there.
we'll link to that in the description.
Exactly.
You know that link, don't you?
Yeah, but thank you for reminding us, and we'll link to it in the description. Can you give it to us again one more time?
I
Immunity.
www.immunity.org.uk.
immunity.org.uk.
Okay, great.
Do
Perfect.
go
Perfect.
there. Go to the videos page, okay?
Okay, we'll
Mwah.
do.
I love you both. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for
Thank you.
being
Bye.
here.